Hey, what's up guys, Rev here. So in this video, we're going to compile a whole host of bad takes and tweets about fictional content. Now, Twitter freaks having a meltdown over drawings is nothing new, but it's always cathartic to, every once in a while, point and laugh at them for your own personal entertainment and remind yourself that these people are truly insane. So our first story involves Baldur's Gate 3, which is something we talked about a few days ago. This game is getting a lot of attention, and for good reason. I mean, it seems like it's very well received. A lot of people are enjoying the game so far, but it's also getting a lot of attention because it contains a lot of sexual themes. And these sexual themes are also being used to advertise the game. I mean, this is one of the things that has been most used for advertisements. It is the fact that in the character creation process, you have the option to see the characters fully nude. There's also a lot of scenes going around on Twitter, including this walk-in scene where, unlike the anime trope version of this where it involves attractive characters, in Baldur's Gate 3 you walk in on a werewolf man porking an ogre. And there's also this infamous scene where players have the option to have sex with a bear. Yes. So unsurprisingly, a lot of people are pointing out the hypocrisy between how Baldur's Gate 3 is being treated versus anime-style games coming out of Japan, where Baldur's Gate 3, with its strong sexual themes, is being universally praised by gaming journalists. However, those same gaming journalists often demonize anime-style games for far less fan service and sexual themes. In fact, most of those games are censored or banned off of Steam for small amounts of fan service, yet Baldur's Gate 3 with full-on nudity and sex scenes with a bear is allowed with no problems. And a lot of people have been comparing this to other acts of censorship that were widely praised by gaming journalists and Twitter at large. So this tweet says, "Remember how mad they were over this scene and how they celebrated its removal in the remaster. Remember that as you see the 20th story this week about how much they're loving Baldur's Gate 3's nudity and sex stuff." And of course, they're referring to gaming journalists who are, once again, like I said, praising Baldur's Gate 3's sexual themes. So that tweet was referring to 2021 when BioWare censored Mass Effect Legendary Edition's butt shots of the character Miranda. These were shots that nobody had a problem with, but suddenly in the Legendary Edition, they thought that was too much for players to handle, so they censored those shots. And of course, that was something celebrated by gaming journalists at the time because they believed that that shot was the product of misogyny and the male gaze and other buzzwords. Now, another user would respond to the tweet we are looking at, trying to separate that shot from scenes and imagery contained within Baldur's Gate 3. So they say most of Baldur's Gate 3 moments of sexuality are appropriately explored within context. This was a serious moment, inappropriately marred by sexual fixation / objectification. We love Miranda, but there's a time and place, and this wasn't it. So they're going to tell you that this shot is bad and inappropriate, but all of the things contained within Baldur's Gate 3 are totally fine and appropriately explored within context. Please tell me how that shot is any different than the full-on nudity contained within the character creation process of Baldur's Gate 3. There's no other purpose for that option in Baldur's Gate 3 other than to look at nude characters. There's no appropriately explored context. It's just because players want to see the characters nude. There's nothing more to it, and guess what? That's okay. But that certainly has more sexual themes and pointless sexual themes than this shot right here, but somehow that's okay. And we're not even talking about the bear sex scene. Please explain to me how that is appropriately explored moments of sexuality. Please explain that to me. Or the classic walk-in scene that normally is demonized in anime, but when it involves an ogre and a werewolf in a Western-style game, suddenly it's an appropriately explored theme within its context. It's such a joke. There's no difference here. These are all acts of fan service and sexual nature, and a lot of them are pointless, and that's okay. But there's nothing unique about this shot versus the things in Baldur's Gate 3. In fact, most of the things in Baldur's Gate 3 are much worse in terms of sexuality. But nonetheless, another user pointed this out, that the person who made that post right here, they are a vshoujo admin. Now, when I bookmarked this tweet 2 days ago, I checked the bio of this Ash person, and yes, they had vshoujo admin in their bio. However, in the 2 days that have passed since I got this most up-to-date screenshot, they have since removed vshoujo admin from their bio, which I only point that out because there's only two possibilities here. Either one, they were lying about being a vshoujo admin, which is very strange, or they are a VShojo admin, which is also very strange because how could a VShojo admin have an issue with a scene like this when you think about the kind of people and the sexual themes incorporated by VTubers within VShojo? Like, it would make absolutely no sense. It'd be extremely hypocritical, but that was something I want to point out because they have since taken out the VShojo admin from their bio. But moving on, we have another story about people crying over drawings. So long story short, there's a lot of replies in various threads leading up until this moment, but basically this user named Mari was being accused of being a bigot by this user right here. And of course, some people were asking for proof. If you think they're a bigot, please show proof that they are engaging in that sort of behavior. So they say, let's start with her internalized misogyny and the fact that she overlooks intense sexualization of women. And they use these two tweets as proof. So this first one is simply the user pointing out double standards when it comes to male characters. I don't understand what they're going for with this one as their evidence. But this is the one that apparently is like the smoking gun, where an individual had a screenshot of the infamous volleyball scene from the One Piece anime and said, stuff like this made me uncomfortable, where Mari simply says, then don't watch it. Apparently this is evidence of internalized misogyny and the sexualization and objectification of women, because people are uncomfortable over drawings and the response is, well, then maybe don't consume that content. Yeah, that's all it takes to be labeled as a misogynist and a bigot, apparently. Someone crying over anime titties and someone saying, you know what, maybe if you don't like that, don't consume it. But yeah, that's pretty crazy. There's really nothing else to say. That's all they have in terms of evidence to back up their claims that someone is a full-on bigot. But moving on, the more Puritan-like nature of Twitter is on display once again. So this meme here with 35,000 likes says makers producing useless sex scenes, and it's basically they're doing too much of it in any show or movie. Now I find this very interesting because I have a theory about, human sexuality and degeneracy. I believe full in my heart that people have always been degenerates, okay? Since cavemen were drawing on walls, they were drawing sexual pictures, and they were deviants. I just think in the modern age, it's easier to be a degenerate. Because back in the Victorian age, the random person couldn't just log onto the internet and have literally trillions of images of poontang at their disposal for free. It's just a lot easier and it's a lot more noticeable nowadays. So I just find it very curious that currently we have some of the most degenerate people in human existence, and yet some of the most commonly shared opinions are Puritan-like. It's so weird because we know behind closed doors a lot of the people supporting narratives like this are degenerates themselves. And they're open about it. They just don't view themselves that way. Like, all the people that we see talking about hypersexualization and things like that, you go through their Twitter likes, it's filled with porn. That's all it is. And for some reason, they think they're above it and they're different because, well, I don't know. I really don't know what it is. But mostly it's younger people supporting this thing. It's not like the classic 90s soccer moms who are against sexualization and things like that. These are mostly young people on social media supporting posts like this. And it's very, very strange. I think it's the first time I can ever really recall in history where it's the young people pushing for a more conservative narrative when it comes to sexual themes. And it's very, very strange. And also, if you can't find a show that doesn't contain a lot of useless sex scenes, that is a skill issue. That's your problem. You're not looking hard enough. There's literally hundreds of thousands of shows that don't have any of that, so I don't really know what to say. But this one takes a much more serious turn here. So we're talking about horror as a concept. And this tweet with 162,000 likes quotes a opinion about this movie saying, unpopular opinion, horror needs to stop including R-word scenes. Now, of course, if that concept makes you uncomfortable, that's totally understandable. But when it comes to horror as a concept, I don't understand why you're not allowing something like that, but you still allow things like murder, torture, mutilation, and other brutal acts of physical and mental violence. But this, because it's emotionally charged, is somehow different. If this depiction in horror makes you uncomfortable, well, guess what? That's the goal. The entire goal of horror is to make you uncomfortable and present things that scare us as people. And of course, the whole R-word scene is representative of something that scares people, just like murder and torture and all of those things. It's very strange that there's an exception made for that, and somehow 162,000 people agree. It's very strange to me, and it kind of goes against the entire principles of horror as a concept. But also, as I have to state, with tweets going beyond viral like this from accounts that can barely get a few likes on their normal tweets, did this one get botted? Well, I've seen it happen many times before, so I wouldn't write that off. But moving on, I've seen a lot of people completely turn their backs on Oshi. This is a series that contains a lot of dark themes, and when it came out, the anime at least, it got very, very popular despite having a very dark nature to it. And suddenly, this is one of many tweets, people have turned on this franchise because of this manga panel where there is a jokingly ship between twin characters. People who are totally fine with all the other dark themes of this franchise have completely turned their backs as soon as they see something that is very common in anime. Okay, these types of jokes and dynamics are very common. Whether you like that or not, well, it probably tells me if you're a tourist. You don't have to like it, but to be surprised by it, that shows that you're new to this area. And you have people saying cancel the whole series, the manga, the anime, I want it all discontinued permanently. I think these people would literally have an aneurysm if they saw something like Orimo or Yatsuga no Sora, where these things are 10 times worse. But nonetheless, it's just funny to see how quickly people turn their backs on this series. But now we're going to move on to this. So, one of the franchises that gets a lot of flack for its character designs is Xenoblade. So they have the more classic waifu-styled characters. And a lot of people say continuing to use these designs is going to backfire because people don't like it. They just want characters to be normal and not hypersexualized like this, which hypersexualization is what? A busty figure, but nonetheless, a lot of people would say that Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was going to bomb and have an issue, and it's done very well. And a lot of people are pointing out that these designs have stayed, and hopefully people are witnessing that people do support these typical waifu-styled characters, and please don't continue changing characters to make them uglier like they are in Western games. Well, this individual responds with saying, there's something about people who delve into deep, expansive, and interesting narratives as Coomer material first and foremost that annoys me. Like, I'm not one to criticize lenses of enjoyment, but it feels so boring and weightless. I'm not one to criticize lenses of enjoyment, but that's exactly what I'm going to do. The person here is not limiting the entire franchise to the design of these characters. They're just saying that you don't need to change them. They are successful and will continue to be successful, and it's something that players clearly want. They're not limiting and denigrating the entire franchise to just sex appeal. The only one doing it is this person supposedly pointing it out. And it's very funny that they are doing exactly what they're trying to ridicule this user for. But again, this whole idea of if you want attractive characters, you must be a Coomer is nothing new, and it's becoming more and more popular. Unfortunately, we're seeing the results where a lot of characters are being toned down to appeal to people like this who don't represent the actual audience playing these games. And I guess it's not surprising that this does have consequences, this whole narrative of appealing to Western audiences and the loud people on Twitter. So Square Enix is someone that is experiencing the F around and find out dynamic of this. So they infamously came out with their global standards team, right? They wanted to have some global ethics. They wanted to appeal to a greater audience by toning down problematic themes, which of course almost exclusively revolve around sexual themes. And of course, they are starting to see a hit. Ever since they've taken this approach, their stock has been plummeting. And I guess this is proof that things do actually have consequences in this realm. That it's not just the loud squeakers on Twitter who have a say, it's the actual customers. And hopefully Square Enix takes this as a learning moment and turns back before it's too late, because I fear this is going to be the approach for a lot of companies that have taken this new approach to appeal to the global ethics which really just means loud people on Twitter that are giving them a hard time. But nonetheless, I know this was a lot of topics today and a lot of different themes, so please share all of your thoughts about each topic in the comment section down below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.